On. Okay, good morning. As a preliminary matter, this is John Brescher, Chair of the Town Government Study Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipating the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rick Atherton.
Here.
Tucker Holland.
Here.
Curtis Barnes. Here. Perfect. Thank you. We have no staff. Go figure. We don't have any potential anticipated speakers. I'll get to that with NPDC in a little bit. So good morning. This open meeting of the Town Government Study Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a public accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to encourage participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment to those members of the public that have joined via Zoom. For this meeting, the Town Government Study Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I, the chair, knows otherwise. All right, let's go to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For any items of public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public who have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. I am so sick of that. Okay, so let's get to the first item on the agenda. We have a relatively light agenda today, but still enough to talk about. So first item is the approval of the agenda. May I have an approval of the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
Beautiful. Okay, motion was made and seconded by Rick and then by Tucker. We'll any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Rick Atherton.
Aye.
Tucker Holland.
Aye.
And Curtis Barnes just left. Awesome. I will, as the chair, vote aye as well. Okay. Next item is public comment. There is, seeing as there are no members of the public here, I don't believe we'll have any public comment. The approval of the minutes, I was unable to get to drafting the minutes. So with your indulgence, we will push this over until the next meeting so we have time to accurately describe what happened at the last meeting, the best I can in terms of cleaning everything up. Okay, hold on. This should be good. I think this is Linda.
I'm dialing in through the phone because I still don't have my laptop.
Oh, got it. All right. Hello, Linda. I think Curtis is going to join us again in a second. Okay, so moving on. So up next is the discussion of the unresolved items on our topics to investigate list. And sort of the big topic would be the discussion of expanding the role or redefining the Town Government Study Committee and a town quote governance committee.
Did you see, let's stop there, John, for a second. Did you see the selectmen's meeting last week?
I did not see it. I did hear some about it. Why do you ask?
Because they're terminating us, I believe, at the end of June, and we need to have that report.
Great.
And so whatever we do, I think we need to meet more often than just once every 2 or 3 weeks in order to get a report together as best we can, particularly without Lauren.
Yep.
This is a problem.
So I think, so you are, that is what I heard as well. I had a talk with Libby last week about it, and she comments about basically having us wrap up at town meeting. Oh, here Curtis, let Curtis in. And so she would effectively like us to have something, a similar report or something drafted to the select board in May. And then we have our final report to town meeting. And she knows that that we are waiting on Lauren, and she said that she's going to get in touch with John Giorgio, who is able to light a fire under Lauren better than any of us can, apparently.
Because whatever we do, we need to correct the technical issues under state law. And
Mhm.
if we do nothing else, we've got to get that part of this report. Otherwise, we've got to ask them to keep going.
Right.
Because there's no point if we're flouting anything on state law that has changed.
No, I
And we
think,
don't
I
do
think
it
that's,
5
think
years,
that's
we're
right.
going to be up to speak.
nope, I think that's right. Okay, so we're actually sort of working somewhat backwards here because we know what our end date and what our conclusion is. And so we need to, I think, really sort of finalize everything that we can. And I think Linda made an excellent point that whatever we have left to do, we need to meet more than once every 2 weeks. And perhaps that means that it is weekly meetings and that we all take on more to do and come up with firmer recommendations, for lack of a better term, for the outstanding items that we have.
You got to figure out, John, also make a list, a cheat sheet now, or what are the items we are going to comment on as opposed to flailing in the sky here.
Sure. My assumption, for what it's worth on that, was that we were going to comment on everything that we have, sort of, everything that we have, comment on or have some more robust comments on the previous memo to the select board, and then supplement that with a handful of other topics that we've been discussing. We can fill in those and we can come to, quote, the recommendations on that while we continue to await Lauren, Giorgio, whomever for town council, knowing that that is really what we need in terms of the charter.
Can you send that memo out again?
Yep.
So I have it up in more recent email.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what I'll do is I will send the memo and I will send the topic of list of topics to investigate.
Okay.
Because that's where I think we are.
Yep.
With all that. And I mean, my hope is that we have these sort of weekly meetings and that we can just come to, knock the topics off one by one and put them together. Oh, hold on, Curtis has raised his hand. I can do this, I think.
I
Go
just
ahead.
want to know if you're hearing me.
Yes, now we can.
Okay, I rebooted, so, all right, so I'm in. All right,
All right.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, John, are we all in agreement that one of the biggest topics that has the biggest range is going to be the form of town meeting?
I'm not sure I follow what you mean by that.
I think one of the things that's going to cause the most discussion among the population is the form of town meeting, representative versus continuing.
I think that's, I mean, I think that is sort of the most exciting topic, but I don't think we're at I don't think anyone's at a point to say that we should recommend anything one way or the other than to say that we study it further. But Curtis, go ahead. Your hand's raised.
I have reached out to a colleague from Tufts University days who is on the representative town meeting in Westport, Connecticut. And I have an
Wow.
chart that he sent me, and I haven't had time to call him over the weekend, but I am going to call him and ask him about his experience. Apparently, Westport has had a representative town meeting for 20 plus years. And, my bias is to look at this very seriously. My purpose in saying that is, if I were a representative up in the Sunset Hill area, I would plan to have 2 or 3 meetings in the summer when my summer guests are here. Bring them up, just sit around the yard, talk about issues. And I think it's a way to reach out and to touch more people directly if we were to do that. So you do know my bias on this anyway, but I'm going to call Peter Gold and have a dialogue with him, and then I will prepare a written report for the committee after that meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so do we want to talk any more about the representative versus open, or go back to the government, the topic on the agenda? Yes, Rick.
Well, my sense had been we had talked about this before, and we've made, I think, some written comments about this. And I thought we felt there was a kind of a marching order. Was that from a town meeting vote? What was that in response to? To have
The ballot, wasn't it?
Yeah, have the ballot. And Tucker, you were helpful here in sort of getting that going, and that was where we were. And I'm not sure we've agreed to go any further than that. At least that's where I thought we were.
Yeah, that's my recollection as well, Rick, that, the ballot measure basically indicated that folks are, think it is worth investigating things further, but I'm not sure, I would hesitate to be making any sort of recommendation at this juncture myself.
So I think that's where we are.
And that may be the recommendation, that per the mandate of the electorate, this is a topic that requires much further study, much greater detail, and that if that the townsfolk want the research done, want the studies done, if they assuming they do, it's going to take a long time. I mean, that's not something you want to rush.
So agreed.
But we need to start it.
We need to talk about it, though, in whatever report we do, that we did a lot of study on this particular issue, and here are the pros and cons in that report.
Well, I don't know how much we want to get into. Well, that's an interesting point, Linda, because I don't disagree about the pros and the cons of it all, but I'm leery. How do I say this? I'm leery of making it one-sided in any way. That I think that given that we've been asked to do a lot of, or that the town has asked, the town's people, the electorate has asked for further research, that it be as objective as possible. And just say this is what we've seen, this is what we've done. Yes, Tucker.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to document in our report that a great deal of research has gone into this and the ballot measures, et cetera. But I think at this same time, this is a very weighty issue, and is going to require, as you said, John, like a great deal more study, public education and involvement, and that's not going to happen like between now and June. So I think we want to emphasize in the report the seriousness with which we have been investigating this topic, but also that it's a topic that is going to require a lot more work.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, that's a good way. But yes, Curtis.
Maybe the trick is to pass this ball to the select board and say, okay, we've done the research. Now it's up to you to decide if you want to put it on an agenda, and let them make the call on how much more research they want, or whether they want to put it in as a ballot question. Let them be the villains or the good guys instead of us.
Rick.
Yeah, I agree with you. We need to be very specific that we spent a lot of time researching this.
Rick.
And that is this just being tossed off the top of our head here.
Right. Rick, go ahead.
I have no problem with any of those comments. I would say one additional thing we might think about at some point is the lack of availability of town council impacts this issue amongst others. And
yes,
at some point, the select board has to commit to making town council. We can blame it on the pandemic, and and there's some truth to that, but not total. So, because without their commitment to making town council showing up, we're just a little committee out here. We have no authority, to make them act, and that needs to be understood, I think.
Very hard.
Yeah, it is a very, very salient point in all of this, that to a degree, we're hamstrung by a lack of access.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so
guys,
Yeah, go
keep
ahead.
in mind, we meet for a long time because they weren't allowing these collateral groups to meet by Zoom for maybe 6 months after the pandemic started. So we lost a lot of time last year.
we were an honest 4 months. I mean, it was mid-March. I think it was
Yes.
until July that we met again. But
I don't
anyway,
think it was even July, was it?
who knows? Time seems to be irrelevant during this pandemic. Who knows? Something. All right. So I think this is fantastic, by the way, that we're sort of talking about how to wrap it up. So once we're done with this meeting, I'm going to write a note to myself right now. I'm going to send out memo, and send out topic list. And then we go from there and start gearing up to start beefing up the sections and making recommendations and just filling in what we can, knowing that we do have filling in for the end date. So the other one that I do think that that's on the agenda that I'd love to talk about, or come to a reasonable conclusion or recommendation on, is the idea of either changing the expanding the mission or who the governance study committee reports to, or recommending if the town wants to set up their own governance committee, which the select board and town admin has the authority to do so. But if they actually do that, I think they need to hear it from an outside source to say, hey, you guys might want to consider doing this. So I'd love to hear any and all opinions on this. I know that we were waiting for Campbell to a degree, but she can't make it. And I get the sense that she is very much in favor of expanding the role. Curtis, go ahead. You got your hand raised.
My question, if we recommend a governance committee, is that in essence trying to create an ombudsman by committee, a place to go when you have a problem and you go to the governance people and say, somebody's not responding, so you make them respond?
It's a really good question, Chris. I don't necessarily think so, because unless foolishly the select board or whomever creates a committee that has any power or any teeth, it's almost like an advisory board or advisory committee. With this, I mean, it has no adjudicatory power to say, well, I realize you're aggrieved. Well, no, I'm going to tell you that the plumbing inspector needs to do this, or the lighting inspector needs to do that, or whatever. I don't necessarily think that would be an unintended consequence, but I appreciate the concern that people may try to jump on that committee as a means to not just air their grievances, but look for a resolution for the grievances. And I think that's
I'm wondering whether that is the default that kind of committee appointment would create. And frankly, the select board has to want to have someone help them do their job, because right now I don't think they listen to anything that we're saying.
Rick, I saw your hand up.
I have struggled with this so-called difference between a town government study committee and governance. And, I looked at virtually all those charges that Campbell had come up with, and I don't think the distinction is so readily clear. in my mind. And I've pointed out before that the prior committee made all kinds of recommendations, in sort of a supplemental letter that seemed to be closer to governance, and the actual language in our charge, concludes with, I have to look it up, other items. In other words, we have a very
Right, the catch-all.
we have a very broad charge already, and I don't think we need to go about trying to create another one, frankly.
So I think the only, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. I guess the question would be, and I'm picking on Andover here. They report to the select board more so than town meeting, and I think that is the other sort of distinction that I'm not sure that that we should focus on or harp on, because I know that we talked about it somewhat at last meeting, that it's almost a courtesy. It line, in my opinion, it falls somewhere between a courtesy and a politically savvy move to get the select board on board, for lack of a better term, with anything that our committee does, even though under our charge is to report to town meeting. Tucker, go ahead.
Committee could go right to the board of the selectmen. If we're doing a governance committee, we'd be reporting to the selectmen, not town meeting. We report to town meeting.
Yes, Tucker.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Rick. Like, I don't know. Unless we can put a lot better definition. I mean, like most organizations, the governance committee would actually sit above the select board, not below it.
Good, let's do it.
But well, so yeah, when that, but that's, that isn't going to happen here, sort of thing. So I'm very hesitant to go in that direction without a whole lot more understanding of what it would be. And the second comment I'd make is, nature abhors a vacuum. So like creating something is just going to invite, I mean, if there's a real problem we're trying to solve, maybe, but I'm not sure there is.
If I can, I think the problem that, I don't know that there's a problem that we're trying to solve, to be perfectly fair. I think this idea came from the number of interviews that we conducted and what the committee was relied upon to do during our tenure. And the thought being that, well, there are instances where the government study committee may not be meeting, their terms may have expired, et cetera, and that the town will be asking certain questions, or they'd like to rely on not an independent body, but on some other committee to help look at certain warrant articles or bylaw questions or whatever it may be. And should they have to just wait the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, however long it is, until the next government study committee is up and running again? That in my opinion, that's the only reason this is even coming up. That it felt like that people latched on to what we were doing and asked us a whole lot of questions, which perfectly legitimate under our charge, under our broad charge. But what happens when the government committee is not up and running?
Well, why wouldn't, so I mean, I guess my first thought is I'd rather make the appointments going forward for the town government study committee to serve for, a 2-year period, but with the commitment that you would make yourself available and during that interim period till the next government study committee is appointed, to advise the board, on a as needed basis. And I would think the board would probably think carefully about what they actually asked that committee to weigh in on or not. But if the problem is there isn't someone around, just make it part of the duties of serving on the committee, but not have to have a standing committee that's I don't know. I don't like the governance committee idea.
Sure. Okay, Rick, go ahead.
Just another follow-up item. It seems to me, let's just take an example, because I think, John, you were getting at something. When Cheryl Emery came before our committee early on, she had a perspective on how the Park and Recreation Commission should operate and be appointed, not unlike Maria Zota's article for town meeting this year. And I think, some people might call that governance. I'm not sure they would or wouldn't, but
Sure.
I think it's pretty clear that the select board and town administration aren't going to bring that to any governance committee's attention, because they feel they've got it under control.
It's an interesting point.
Just giving you an example of how trying to set something up to do something that really is unlikely to be effective. And that just is another way to say what I think I was trying to say in the first place.
Okay, that's fair, and it's certainly a albeit cynical point, but I think a valid one. You're right. If I could very well see if a governance committee were under the select board, that they could, to a degree, be the gatekeeper of what is heard and not. So I see where you're coming from with that. Absolutely. All right. So in that case, if we're not, I'm not sure the sort of temperature of the committee on this, but it's not quite if it's I don't know if this is going anywhere, or if we just need to say leave it as is, or put it under the guise of the select board, or not so much, or not.
Yeah.
Yes, Rick.
So, yeah, John, just to sort of, how do we come to a conclusion here? And it seems to me we have a number of items on this list that we've talked about that many of us thought might be a good idea. And I just mentioned a couple, requiring in the charter that the town administration submit an organization chart in sufficient detail to the board once a year, and the board has to acknowledge it or something. Another one was enforcement. And, lots of people feel the town's approach to enforcement is a policy of you don't enforce anything unless the citizens gripe. And one idea was to ask that be added to the town manager's job responsibilities to enforce the laws and regulations. And then the select board can judge whether that's being handled properly or not. So I'm just giving you
Hold on, Rick. Stay there for a second. You saying that Libby has to enforce zoning laws and planning board decisions and zoning decisions?
I'm not really saying anything, just enforcement in general, Linda. Let's forget the jurisdictional issue for a moment, because I think there are lots of people who feel somebody has to be in charge. And it's pretty clear to me that our committee has been unable to bring any of those to fruition and make a specific recommendation. Now, maybe that's, up to us. I'd be happy to bring a motion back if you want to do it, but I've never heard sort of a consensus building around those kinds of things. So that our report really is saying, here are the issues, and we have no, other than saying they might be a nice idea, we have no firm recommendation for how they should be implemented or not. That's what our report's going to say, other than the audit committee and other than a specific letter on the governance issue brought to town meeting by Teresa Williams. Those are two specific items. So that's just my observation. And I think under those circumstances, we're best to honor the end of our committee and make the report and move on to let someone else take it over next time, quite frankly.
that, sorry, just typing the minutes, that, I see where you're coming from. I think that makes some sense. So
Good
with,
luck to the next group.
yeah, kind of, I mean, or that the issues haven't hit like a saturation point. You know, I mean, somebody's come up, but it hasn't been that, you know, it hasn't been that pressing, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, well, so our report says we think the charter is just Jim Dandy and move on. And I don't know that I agree with that. I might have a minority report that says paragraph 4 needs to be rewritten. But
I think that's part of it too. I mean, I don't think that we can just say, well, I think it's a combination. Personally, I think it's a combination. Say, look, we think that these are the areas that could use further update. And that's partially when we say, or throw town council under the bus and say, look, but at the same time, we need access, or we needed somebody to make sure that these suggestions or recommendations comply with Mass General laws. And we're not equipped to do that.
Yep.
I don't think.
Well, that's fine.
Okay, so I think, I mean, I think that our next sort of step on this is that we start really, striking off. Or I'll send along the memo. I'll send along the topic list, and we start striking off or striking out what we can talk about, or what else we can write on, and what we can't write on, and just pardon me, go through this and do it as best we can.
Okay, I'm still on my quest to have the Concom and the ZBA elected. I've never gotten off that quest for like 20 years, so that's still a bugaboo in my brain. Any regulatory board should be elected.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, I think, unless I hear otherwise, I think that what we should start to do really is move, start meeting weekly. And so we can get together and do what we need to do, and have everybody sort of assigned topics at home to start writing reports and editing.
Yep.
Do we want to schedule the same day every week at the same time? That might be a lot easier than trying to cherry pick.
That may not be a bad idea at all. What's better, gang? Tuesdays or Wednesdays?
How about Wednesday at
It's never good on
10:30?
Tuesday.
Wednesday, 10:30.
Okay, Wednesday, 10:30. Life is good. Look at this progress.
Boy, way to go, Tucker.
Thanks, man. All right, so let's. I mean, at this point, any other business?
So we're set next Wednesday at 10:30.
No.
Yeah.
I'll schedule it, but yeah.
I think Wednesdays are generally good days for Zoom availability with Erica.
Yeah.
So what would you like us to do for next week, John?
Excellent question, Tucker. And I honestly don't really know, other than to say, look through the memo and look through the topics, and sort of email me separately about what you think we still need to talk about, and we'll put it on the agenda and start cranking them through. And
the memo is really that is going to morph into the report.
I think that's right. I think the memo as it is sort of the skeletal outline of the report.
Yep.
Where it should have a lot of what we're going to do, and then we're going to fill it in over the next.
And you're going to follow up with Libby on Lauren for next Wednesday?
Sure. I'm not going to hold my breath, but we can try.
I'd like to force Lauren to meet with us sometime before we adjourn, because she needs to.
Yeah.
Well, she needs to tell us what the technical issues are. Forget everything else. There are things that have changed at the state law that we need to correct in our charter. I can't wait another 5 years.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. All right, so I'll get in touch. I'll see if we can get her to show up next week.
Huh.
Hope springs eternal. All right, and the date and time of the next meeting will be Wednesday, April 28th at 10:30 a.m.
Okey doke.
Okay, anything else from anyone?
Nope, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, Rick, was
No,
that
I
a
was
comment
gonna-
or?
No, that was a second to Linda's motion.
All right, there we go. Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll do roll call vote. Rick Atherton,
Aye.
Tucker Holland,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Curtis Barnes,
I,
and the chair, John Brescher, votes aye as well. All right. Thank you, everyone. Look for an email shortly and we'll keep plugging away.
Thanks very much.
Okey-dokey.
All right, thank you.